Michael slowly approached the bed and sat down next to her. He bent down and gently placed his hand on Victoria's shoulder, feeling the cool skin under his palm. Victoria did not react, only moving slightly in her sleep, her mouth making a soft breathing sound. Michael bent down and placed a kiss on her neck, his breath fanning over her smooth skin, making Victoria shiver slightly. Welcome to our channel. If you love engaging and emotional love stories, then come to our channel. Here we will bring you stories full of surprises, touching and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any interesting stories. In today's video, we would like to present to you a story called Brother-in-Law and Sister-in-Law, narrated by Jane. Please watch along. Outside, the wind was calm. The summer heat seemed to weigh down on everything in the village. Michael lay on an old hammock in the middle of the garden, his eyes absent-mindedly looking into the distance. He was 42 years old, with a wife and 4 daughters. Life seemed full, but a feeling of emptiness clung to him every day. He had always wanted a son to carry on the family line, but after the birth of their 4th child, his wife Riley could not have any more. He sighed, rubbing his face to dispel the feeling of frustration in his heart. "I have a wife and children, but I still feel like something is missing," he muttered. Since the day they got married, the couple gradually grew apart. Riley was no longer as youthful and fresh as before. After many years of giving birth and worrying, she became quiet and quiet. Their feelings for each other also faded, leaving only obligations and responsibilities. At night, lying next to each other, she often complained of being tired and then turned around to sleep. Michael felt like a shadow, alone in his own house. One day, Michael smoked a cigarette while looking at the old phone in his hand, where he was secretly reading stories from cool websites that he considered a way to relieve himself. One night, his wife's family had a birthday party for his mother-in-law, and the whole family gathered together. Sitting at the corner of the dining table, Michael deliberately chose a seat near Victoria, his sister-in-law, wife of Leo, the youngest brother in the family. Since the first time he met Victoria, Michael had been captivated by her appearance. Even though she had 2 children, Victoria still retained her gentle beauty, smooth white skin, a slim, graceful but charming figure. He glanced at Victoria, then was startled when he caught her eyes looking at him. Victoria smiled lightly. Her eyes were clear, but unintentionally made Michael's heart beat faster. "Hello, Michael. Long time no see. How have you been?" Michael tried to keep his voice calm, but his voice was a bit awkward. "It's normal. Leo and I still sell seasonal fruits. It's hard but stable." Victoria's simple words, but her appearance at that time, left a strong impression on Michael. He couldn't help but compare Victoria with Riley, his wife. Everything about Victoria exuded youthfulness and freshness, completely different from the tiredness and saturation he felt from his wife beside him. From then on, Michael began to pay more attention to Victoria. He could not deny that he felt a sense of jealousy whenever he saw Leo, his dumb younger brother, having such a beautiful wife. "Why can't someone like me marry someone like Victoria?" he asked himself many sleepless nights. Gradually, that thought turned into a desire. At first, Michael just stopped at secretly admiring Victoria whenever he had the chance. But then those random encounters became something he looked forward to. The party continued with laughter and chatter, but Michael was in no mood to join in. He just wanted a chance to talk to Victoria alone. After the meal, Michael went out to the porch to light a cigarette, smoking and looking into the distance. Not long after, Victoria also came out and sat down gently on the steps next to him. "Aren't you going to play cards with everyone?" Victoria asked gently. "I don't like it. Sit down for some fresh air." They were silent for a moment. The wind blew gently, carrying the light fragrance of Victoria's hair. Michael took a deep breath, a feeling of excitement rising strongly in his heart. "How are you and Leo doing?" he asked hoarsely. Victoria smiled sadly. "It's still the same. He's always busy. When he gets home, he falls asleep. Sometimes he doesn't say a word for a whole week." Michael looked at Victoria, feeling the loneliness in her every word. He knew that feeling. He was living it every day. "If you have any difficulties, just tell me. Don't be shy. I'm always ready to help you." Victoria looked at him, her eyes downcast. "You're too good to me, but I'm fine." "Don't say that. We are family. I will help with anything I can." Victoria just smiled, but that smile contained so many feelings. She didn't say it, but Michael felt it. A few days later, Michael happened to see Victoria meet a strange woman at the market. She gave the money to that person and hurriedly left. He curiously asked a close drinking buddy, "Victoria, I heard she got into debt because of gambling, and also borrowed money to treat her child's illness. So pitiful." Michael was surprised and a little sympathetic. He did not expect Victoria, that gentle woman, to have to endure so many hardships. But most of all, another feeling arose in his heart. That was the opportunity. "This is the time I can get closer to her," he thought to himself. That afternoon, Michael found an excuse to stop by Victoria's house. When he arrived, Leo was still away because he was busy delivering goods far away. Only Victoria was at home, sitting quietly on the sofa with a sad expression. Seeing Michael enter, Victoria forced a smile. Michael came to visit. Michael pulled up a chair and sat down across from her. His eyes scanned the tired expression on the woman's face before him. "I came by to see how you were doing. You don't look happy these days. Is something wrong, Victoria?" Victoria bowed her head in silence for a moment, then sighed softly. "I won't hide it from you any more. Actually, my family is having difficulties." Michael frowned. "What's the problem? If you need anything, just tell me. I'm always ready to help." Victoria hesitated, her hands clasped together nervously. She looked at Michael, her eyes wanting to speak but hesitant. "It's about the debt, actually." Michael leaned forward and asked softly, "Debt? Be more specific." Victoria took a deep breath, as if gathering all her courage to open up. "I played the lottery before. At first I just wanted to play for fun, but I lost continuously and had to borrow money to pay for it. Then my son got seriously ill, so I had to borrow more money to pay for the hospital bills. Now the interest is piling up, and I don't know when I'll be able to pay it all." Michael was silent, looking at Victoria with a mixture of sympathy and calculation. "I see. How much is that debt now?" Victoria bowed her head and said softly, "There's still about 500,000 left. If you can pay it all at once, everything will be fine, but if you don't have it right away, you can lend it to us gradually. I promise we'll pay it all back within 1 to 2 years." She looked at him, her eyes filled with hope, but also unable to hide her guilt. "Mr. Michael, if you can help me, I'd be truly grateful." Michael looked deep into her eyes. Before him was a weak woman who needed him more than ever. He nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll lend you the money. Let me find enough money for you to pay it back at once, don't worry." Victoria was stunned, her eyes filled with emotion. "Will you really help me? I don't know what to say." "No need to be polite, we're family. And I'll pay you back whenever I can, there's no rush." Victoria bit her lip, her eyes glistening as if she was about to cry. She grabbed Michael's hand, squeezing it tightly as if it was the only lifeline in her life. "I can never repay you for this favor in my entire life." Michael just smiled, gently rubbing her hands. "Don't say that. I just want to see you safe. It hurts me to see you like this." Victoria bowed her head, her voice trembling slightly. Thank you so much. If you need anything, just tell me." In that moment, Michael knew that she was completely dependent on him, and from now on, she could not refuse him anything anymore. One afternoon, Michael sat in the living room across from his wife, gently arranging some plates to prepare for the memorial service tomorrow. He took a sip of tea, his eyes glancing at his wife thoughtfully. "Honey," Michael began slowly, his voice soft as if talking about everyday things. "I think this way. Leo is having a hard time. The debt is due, and he hasn't been able to pay it back yet. We are his older brother. Can we just stand by and watch our younger brother suffer like this?" Riley paused for a moment, turning to look at her husband with a worried look. "But where will you get the money now? Our family doesn't have much money." Michael put the teacup down on the table, smirked, as if Riley's question was already in his mind. "I've already planned this. This money is from Maria, our daughter, who sent it back to us for safekeeping. We'll wait a few years before we get it back. Instead of letting the money sit there, we'll lend it to our uncle and aunt. After a few years, when their business is stable, we can pay it back. When our daughter comes back, she'll still receive all the money, and we'll have a good reputation for helping her when she's in trouble." Riley pondered. The money her son sent home was originally hard-earned savings. Lending it to Leo was a risky move. But thinking about her brother's plight, Riley couldn't bear it. Riley looked at her husband, half believing, half hesitant. "But what if he can't pay it back in time? This money is yours, not mine." Michael chuckled, reaching out to hold his wife's hand tightly. "Don't worry, Leo and his wife are decent and hard-working people. Sooner or later they will pay it back. I'm his older sister. Isn't it normal for me to help my brother in times of trouble? When everyone knows that I helped him like this, everyone will praise me as a good older brother and older sister, a couple with a good relationship." Riley listened to her husband's analysis and gradually felt it made sense. She nodded, feeling relieved. "That's fine. But remember to be tactful so as not to embarrass her, and remind her to try to return it to you soon." Michael smiled with satisfaction. "All right, rest assured." Michael knew in his heart that this was not simply helping his brother-in-law. It was also a calculated move, and everything was going according to plan. That afternoon, Michael's mother-in-law's house was crowded with children and grandchildren attending the anniversary of their grandfather's death. Incense smoke filled the house, chatter filled the air, and people came and went busily. In the bustling atmosphere, Michael and Riley walked in with envelopes of money in hand. When Leo and Victoria saw their sister and brother-in-law appear, the two of them rushed out to greet them. "You're here!" Leo said excitedly, his face showing joy. Riley smiled and patted her brother's shoulder affectionately. "Michael and I came not only to eat the death anniversary, but also to bring this gift for you and your aunt." Leo looked at the envelope Riley gave him in surprise. When he opened it and saw the money inside, he was stunned with emotion. "Sister, are you really going to help us with this money?" Michael laughed heartily, putting his arm around Leo's shoulder intimately. "Of course. We're sisters. We have to help each other when times are tough. You and Victoria just need to focus on doing business well, and when you have the means, you can pay us back." Leo was moved to tears. "You two are so good to us. I don't know how to thank you enough." Riley patted his brother's head and said kindly, "Just focus on doing good business. We don't need anything more." Leo was so moved that he was speechless. The atmosphere in the house was getting more and more bustling and lively. The children were running around in the yard, and the adults were busy preparing the feast. Michael's wife, Riley, was busy helping in the kitchen, while Michael, Leo, and the other men sat on the porch, clinking glasses. "It's been a long time since I've seen you drinking so happily, Michael," laughed a young brother, raising his glass to offer. "It's been a long time since we've had a great time together like this," Michael replied, trying to keep his face casual, although he couldn't help but think about Victoria, Leo's wife. Michael's eyes occasionally glanced at Victoria, seeing her carrying food from the house. The floral dress she was wearing fluttered in the wind, highlighting her slim yet seductive figure. Michael swallowed hard, unable to shake off the uneasy feeling. The party lasted until early afternoon. Leo drank a lot, and before everyone had even finished clearing the table, he collapsed onto the hammock and fell asleep like the dead. Seeing this, Riley reminded Michael, "Let's go home early. If we leave Leo lying here like this, who will take care of him?" Michael took another sip of wine and smiled softly. "You go home first. I'm a bit drunk. I'll stay here and sleep with Leo. When the wine runs out, I'll go home." Riley didn't doubt it at all, just nodded. "Then let me clean up and go home." After everyone left, there were only 3 adults left in the house: Michael, a drunk Leo, and Victoria. Leo lay flat on the hammock, snoring steadily, while Victoria was finishing the dishes. Michael sat against the wall, rubbing his temples, feeling dizzy from the alcohol. Seeing this, Victoria brought him a glass of lemonade. "Drink this to relieve your headache." Michael took it and took a sip. He looked around and saw that the space around him was quiet. The children had long gone to bed at their grandmother's house, leaving only the 2 of them awake in this house. "Thank you," Michael said, looking at Victoria intently. Victoria just smiled slightly and turned to walk into the room. She had changed into comfortable home clothes, a pair of cream shorts and a tank top. Her sexy figure was revealed under the thin shirt. Michael couldn't take his eyes off her. The alcohol in his body, combined with the pent-up emotions, made him unable to hold back anymore. The afternoon sun had gradually faded, giving way to darkness. Michael lay down on the bed, his head still aching. He intended to lie down for a while to wait for the hangover to subside, but then when his eyes glanced through the half-open door, he saw Victoria lying on the mattress inside. Under the gentle breeze from the ceiling fan, her tank top fluttered slightly, revealing her 2 mounds of breasts and smooth white skin. Her hair was loose, a bit messy from cooking, but it made her even more attractive. Michael felt his whole body burning, all reason gradually fading, replaced by intense desires. He gently stood up, carefully closing the door without making a sound. The sound of Leo's hammock still creaked outside, steady and harmless. Inside the room, Victoria still had her eyes closed, thinking that her husband had come in to lie down next to her. Michael slowly approached the bed, sitting down next to her. He bent down, gently placing his hand on Victoria's shoulder, feeling the cool skin under his palm. Victoria did not react, only moving slightly in her sleep, her mouth making a soft breathing sound. Michael bent down, placing a kiss on her neck. His breath on her smooth skin made Victoria shiver slightly. Still closing her eyes, Victoria thought it was Leo, her husband. She sighed softly, her body gradually relaxing to let Michael caress her. Michael realized that Victoria was enjoying his every touch, and that made him even bolder. Michael continued to kiss down her shoulder, his hands groping under her shirt. Victoria whispered softly, her voice low and broken. She kept her eyes closed, thinking that the person next to her was her husband. The familiar feeling made her not resist, but instead dozed off to enjoy it. When Michael inserted his penis into her, Victoria shivered slightly, but then immediately, a strange feeling made her open her eyes. The thing inside her was bigger than usual, stronger and unfamiliar. Victoria panicked and gently pushed Michael away, but the dreaminess had taken over her body. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't have enough strength to resist. That place gradually made her only able to stutter softly, as if surrendering to her emotions. Michael looked into Victoria's eyes and whispered softly, "Don't worry, it's just me. No one will know." Victoria shook her head slightly, but then she let it all go, letting all her emotions wash away. The ceiling fan continued to spin, the room engulfed in a storm of emotions that had been buried for too long. Michael gently, his eyes stopped on Victoria's face. In the dim light from the lamp in the corner of the room, Leo was still sleeping soundly on the bed in the living room. His breathing was even like a background between his dream and the ticking clock. A moment of uncertainty existed in Michael's heart. Right or wrong? Victoria said nothing, just silently looked at him with deep eyes that seemed to contain the night sky. The tense emotions through her gaze made Michael ponder, but he was not strong enough to step back. His hand reached for hers. The touch was gentle, but seemed to want to hug everything that could not be grasped. Victoria trembled slightly, either because of the cold or because of something they both knew was not right. At this moment, the space seemed to be stretched, leaving only the erratic heartbeat and the whispering of nameless emotions in his heart. Michael knew he shouldn't do this. Leo was right here, just a few steps away. But reason gradually faded before the close breath. Faced with the weakness of reason, unable to overcome emotions, Victoria's lips gently, and Michael's lips, were not sure to be a complete kiss. Just like a try, a step beyond the boundary of mistakes. But shyness made everything fall apart, dispelling all reasons. He pulled Victoria closer, not too hastily, just enough to feel her warmth spreading to him. Victoria's hand slid to Michael's shoulder, as if wanting to keep this moment, the moment between them, and before it all ended. Victoria's dress was gradually removed under Michael's skillful hands. Outside, time was still passing, but here they were, like two people confused between unforgettable emotions. The sound of Leo turning over on the hammock made both of them stop. Victoria stopped, her eyes avoiding. Everything returned to its place, but the traces of the emotions just now still smouldered in her heart. Michael was gentle. His lips seemed to want to say something, but suddenly stopped. Leo had not woken up, but he did not know that once that drunkenness passed, something had changed. More than an hour passed. It was also the most sublime emotions the two had, emotions that were full of novelty but also contained an unstoppable mistake. Finished, Michael lay on his side next to Victoria. Both of their breathing was still rapid, but gradually calming down. There was still a bit of sweat on their skin. They seemed to have just walked through a storm, dangerous but silent, like what they had just done together. It had never happened. The room was dimly lit. Outside there was only the sound of insects chirping, and the cold from the late wind through the window. Victoria gently pulled away from Michael's embrace, her heartbeat racing against time. At that moment all her emotions were twisted into a knot that was difficult to untangle, both fear and confusion. Michael didn't say anything, just silently watched her put her shirt back on, skillfully adjusting the wrinkled skirt. "Go home," Victoria whispered, her voice so small that it seemed like a fleeting breath. Michael stood up gently, quietly, carefully put his shirt back on, buttoning each button meticulously. He knew this was the moment to let go. All traces of mistakes needed to be erased as if they never existed. He gently walked out the door, his eyes lingering on Victoria's face for the last second, before leading the old dream out of the gate and starting the car away. Victoria watched Michael until he disappeared. She turned back, adjusted the pillows and blankets, and kissed Leo halfway through his sleep. Leo's heavy breathing indicated that he was still drunk, but he definitely wouldn't wake up right now. He was too drunk. Victoria quietly bent down to pick up the beer cans scattered around and put them in a corner. She buttoned Leo's collar, as if to reassure herself that everything was normal. Michael had disappeared into the darkness, like a shadow drifting through her life, but his echo still lingered in Victoria's heart, forcing her to hold back a sigh, not letting it escape. Just as Victoria closed the door, Leo suddenly turned over. He opened his eyes and looked around, his head heavy with alcohol. "What time is it?" he asked awkwardly. Victoria replied in a natural voice, "It's late. Let's go to sleep. We have to wake up early tomorrow." Leo grumbled something and pulled her close, wrapping his heavy arms around his wife. Victoria lay still, eyes open in the darkness, feeling Leo's alcohol-stained breath right next to her ear. The familiar warmth was a gentle reminder of reality, of the husband she still called family. Leo's drunkenness quickly made him fall asleep, his breathing audible only a few minutes later. All traces were erased, no one knew, but Victoria knew what had just happened would forever be in her and Michael's minds, a nameless sin hidden in the middle of moonless nights when everything fell silent. After that night, Michael couldn't stop missing Victoria. Every time he recalled the feeling of her skin touching him, her longing eyes burned his heart. The more he tried to keep his distance, the deeper he was drawn into a dream that had no way out. So the sneaky times began, on the mornings when Leo wasn't home. The first time, Michael made an excuse to bring Leo some food, saying that after a hangover, Leo needed to rest. Victoria opened the door to greet him, her eyes slightly wary, but Michael's presence seemed to stir up something she had been trying to suppress. They sat across from each other in the kitchen, their breathing becoming intermittent with each casual word. As Victoria's coffee cup was put down, Michael's hand crept over, touching hers. Victoria paused but didn't pull back. At that moment, neither of them could hold back the whirlpool of fate. They rushed into each other. Gradually, Michael began to visit Victoria's house more often, each time for a different reason. Leo asked for help carrying things, reattaching the ceiling fan, or simply to see the rose bushes in the garden. At first, they were careful, their eyes furtively looking out the window, their ears listening for every sound outside. But then the suppressed desire turned into boldness. They began to conquer brief sublimations in the middle of the day, where the sunlight still poured in through the window. The door frame pulled Victoria against the wall, and as soon as the door closed behind her, whispers and the sound of clothes rubbing against each other echoed in the narrow space of the kitchen. Once they were discreetly on the sofa in the living room. Michael buried his face in Victoria's neck, her familiar scent making him dizzy. Victoria pulled the curtains back, blocking the sunlight shining directly on them, as if the fragile darkness could conceal what they were doing. The house becomes their own world in furtive moments, a place where there is no past and no need for a future. In the following days, Michael began to neglect everything. He spent less time with his wife, often using work as an excuse to go out. His wife, Riley, initially thought it was just a little pressure at work, but then she began to notice a change in her husband. Michael was no longer interested in conversations and small matters in the family. His eyes seemed to be looking somewhere else. Victoria was no better. Every time she looked at Leo, she felt a wrong feeling, but not enough to keep her. Michael's presence had become an indispensable part of her life, a wrong joy that she did not want to let go. And so the sublime moments in the daytime continued. That afternoon, Leo had to go away for work, and Victoria knew she would be alone. Michael came as usual. They dragged each other into the bedroom, panting, the smell of desire lingering. Not long after, the front door suddenly opened. Riley had been watching Michael for days, she had long suspected, and today she decided to find out the truth. When she pushed open the bedroom door, the sight that met her eyes made her stop. her husband and another woman entangled with each other in her own bed. The room became quiet. Michael and Victoria were stunned. No one reacted. Riley stood there, her eyes cold, her face expressionless, but her eyes said it all. It was the betrayal she had felt for a long time. "So this is what you call work," Riley said, her voice almost choked. Michael stood up, his hands shaking. "Riley, Don't interrupt." Riley's eyes were sharp as knives. "Don't say anything more, everything is clear." Victoria sat huddled on the bed, her face pale, not looking directly at Riley. There was nothing left to hide. The secret times in the daytime, the secret rendezvous, all exposed under the unforgiving light of truth. Riley turned. The bedroom door slammed behind her, the sound echoing like a death knell to the peaceful life Michael had once led. It was all over, not just his marriage, but the sham of his affair with Victoria. News of the betrayal spread quickly after Riley caught Michael and Victoria in the act. Leo found out not long after. Being a quiet person, Leo did not make a fuss. He did not get angry or go to Michael to vent his anger. He just silently faced the pain, as if everything had passed the threshold of tolerance and anger no longer had any meaning. One day, Leo sat at the dining table across from Victoria. The house became unfamiliar, every scene in the house now only evidence of the broken days. Victoria bowed her head and said nothing, her heart heavy with mistakes that could not be compensated. "I've thought about it," Leo said, his voice low but clear. "I'll sell the land that was meant for the two of us. I'll send the money back to Riley and her husband as a way to settle things, and we'll split it." Victoria shouted, not believing what she just heard. "What did you say?" "That land was all the sweat and effort of both husband and wife. It was the hope for a better future, where they would build a new house. Starting over, but now that future was gone." "Leo, don't do this," Victoria whispered, her eyes wet with sadness. "It's over. Don't let it ruin everything." Leo shook his head, his eyes deep but no longer bright. "There's nothing left to save, Victoria. Everything ended the day you chose to cross that line." He stood up, as if this conversation was just the last step in a predetermined plan. "I will complete the divorce proceedings as soon as possible." Victoria slumped against the table, a noise rising in her throat. She couldn't hold it back any longer. The mistake was too obvious, and there was only an empty void. Michael walked away towards Riley. She received the money from Leo with an indifferent look. She had decided not to keep anything related to Michael anymore. Michael was the same. He left everything behind, picked up a small suitcase and left, never to return. He did not return to Victoria, nor did he dare to face Riley again. Now he was a wanderer, a man who had lost everything because of his impulsive emotions. He rented a makeshift room in the suburbs, living day by day like a shadow of himself. Every afternoon, Michael sat on the porch of the motel, silently watching the sunset gradually descend on the horizon. In his mind, there were only blurry images, the furtive breaths in the daytime, the hasty touches in the kitchen, and Riley's icy eyes the day she caught him and Victoria. Those memories did not bring joy, only endless regret and pain. As for Leo and his wife, he signed the divorce papers without hesitation. Victoria had nothing more to say. After the trial ended, they officially went their separate ways. Victoria walked out of the house that used to be their home, taking with her a few souvenirs and countless sorrows. As for Leo, he continued to live quietly as before. He used the remaining money from selling the land to rebuild his life, not much, but enough for him to stand on his own 2 feet. Although the wound from the broken marriage may not heal immediately, Leo did not want to burden it forever. He lived with the belief that time would fade everything. Victoria and Michael, each of them carrying deep scars. Their lives had taken a different turn, with no way back. There were situations that began in error and ended in loss. In the end, all that remained was time. An endless stream that swept away all pain, all memories, and all those who had fallen. And so their story is quiet, not noisy, just people trying to move forward on new paths, knowing that old mistakes will forever follow them like the quiet evening shadow chasing the last light of days gone by. Our story today will stop here. Thank you for taking the time to watch the entire video. Hopefully the details and emotions in the story have brought you interesting and meaningful moments. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share and leave a comment below the video to let me know your opinion. And don't forget to click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any stories in the future. Each of your subscribe buttons and a like will be the motivation to help Jane and the program production team have the motivation to create more attractive videos. And now, see you in the next videos. Wish you a great day.